Hello aspirants, the Odisha Economic Survey 2025-2026 has been tabled in the Assembly and it presents a story of strong growth, fiscal discipline, sectoral balance and inclusive development. If you are preparing for OPSC, then this survey is not just data. This is your state-specific ammunition for prelims, mains and interview. So let's decode it. So if we talk about the overall economy, the first question that comes to mind is Odisha truly outperforming? Let's understand this. Odisha's gross state domestic product at current prices is estimated at 9.9 lakh crore. Okay, in 2025-2026. Okay, last year it was 9 lakh crore. So there's a 9.5% increase in the gross state domestic product, GSDP. Okay, but you need to understand that the real story lies in real growth, real economic growth. Real economic growth is projected at 7.9%. Very important to note. Last year it was 7.2% and the national average right now is 7.4%. So we can say that the national average is 7.4% and this means Odisha, the real economic growth of Odisha is 7.9%. So it is growing faster than the national average and the growth is accelerating. So we all know that the real economic growth is more important than the GSDP, right? Because GSDP or the gross state domestic product is the total monetary value of all final goods and services produced within a year in a state, in a particular state. Just like the GDP, it is for the country and GSDP for the state. Now if we talk about the real economic growth, it refers to the increase in real GSDP over time, which means that it is the actual increase in production because we are subtracting the price rise from it. Okay, so the percentage change in real GSDP, that refers to the real economic growth, which is right now 7.4%. But Odisha's real economic growth is 7.9%. So of course higher than the national average of 7.4%. Okay, now this indicates a number of things. For instance, strong domestic demand, expanding industrial output in Odisha, stable agricultural performance and rising investment momentum across the various sectors in Odisha's economy. Now let's talk about the per capita income growth. Okay, but before that we need to know what is per capita income. So per capita income means the average income earned per person in that particular state in a year. Okay, and it is calculated as what? GSDP divided by total population of the state. In this case it would be Odisha, right? So this gives us the per capita income. Now per capita income growth means the rate at which the average income per person increases over a period of time. Okay, now if we talk about Odisha's per capita income growth over the last year, it is 1,86,761. So in comparison to previous years, per capita income rose by 9.2%. Okay, that is 1,86,761. If we talk about the national level, at the national level, the per capita income growth rate is 6.9%. So this means Odisha is closing the income gap with the national average. Now here growth is not just statistical, it is translating into rising incomes. Because if we talk about employment, there is a structural shift in workforce. If we talk about the labor force participation of people of 15 plus years of age, then in that case in 2022, the labor force participation was at 58.1% and in 2024, it increased and it was 64.5%. The national average is 59.6%. So again we can say that Odisha is performing really well. Now if we talk about female participation particularly, this has also surged. Okay, earlier it was 37.6%. Okay, and now it has increased to 48.6%. 40.7%. Very important to note. Again, the national average of female workforce participation is 40.3%. So, Odisha is clearly improving. So we can say this is a major structural change, and the rising female participation suggests a lot of things like better economic opportunities, greater inclusion, improved social mobility, and rural diversification of income sources. Okay, earlier it was only agriculture, but now there is a lot of diversification. Okay. Please note that agriculture is still the backbone of Odisha's economy, because agriculture contributes to around 19.6% to the state economy. At the same time, if we talk about the national share, it is 16.8%. So again, Odisha is performing better. Okay, growth in agriculture is 5.3%. Okay, very important to note the different like terminologies. Okay, because the share in state economy is a different thing. It is a share in the entire economy, how much of the percentage of the economy is contributed by the agricultural sector. Now if we talk about the growth particularly, okay, it is 5.3%, and if we compare it with the national average is 3.1%. Again, Odisha is performing better. Okay, and this means that Odisha's agriculture is growing faster than India's agriculture. There were record food production, okay, because food grain output was 150.5 lakh metric tons, and rice production was 118.6 lakh metric tons. Okay, and all these are like supported by a number of initiatives. Initiatives like the Samruddha Krishak Yojana, the Chief Minister Kisan Assistance, then higher minimum support price for the grains and input subsidies. So the government is supporting the farmers a lot with the various welfare schemes, and the minimum like support price has also been increased, and these are the reasons for the record production in Odisha. Okay, now if we talk about the procurement strength, then 92.6 lakh metric tons of paddy were procured. Okay, and if we talk about the figures in terms of MSP, how much MSP was paid, it was around 21,300 crore. So 21,300 crores was paid as minimum support price. Okay, input subsidy 7,140 crores, and 78% of the total paddy production were procured. So this is a lot of efficiency in the agricultural sector. If we talk about last year, it was 61%, and now it is 78%. So that is a major expansion of the state support. Ragi procurement by the government also got doubled. Very important to note. So ragi procurement by the government got doubled. Okay, and the minimum support price was around 4,290 rupees per quintal, plus there was an incentive of rupees 210 as well. So this directly strengthens small and marginal farmers in Odisha. Another important thing to note is that the irrigation potential of the state expanded to 74.2 lakh hectares, and the cropping intensity is at 165%. Earlier it was 158%. So there is of course a jump by 4%. So we discussed about irrigation potential and cropping intensity, but what are these? So irrigation potential refers to the maximum area that can be brought under irrigation using available water resources and infrastructure, okay, within the state. So basically it shows the capacity created and not necessarily the area which has been actually irrigated. Please note that. So it is the potential. In the terminology itself you can understand that it is the maximum area that can be brought under irrigation using water available resources. Okay, now if we talk about the cropping intensity, on the other hand, cropping intensity is what? It basically measures how many times a piece of agricultural land is cultivated in a year. Very important to note, how many times a piece of land, agricultural land, is cultivated in a year. So it reflects the extent of multiple cropping on the same land, right? So it matters a lot because the cropping intensity, it indicates the efficient land use, it reflects the irrigation availability, it is also linked to farm income and productivity, because higher intensity reduces pressure to expand farmland. So in a nutshell, we can understand that more land is being cultivated multiple times annually in Odisha. Next, if we talk about the milk production in Odisha, it is 27.1 lakh metric tons. Similarly, there has been an increase in the production of eggs. Okay, earlier it was of worth of 242 crores and now it has increased to 406 crore rupees worth eggs. Okay, so of course there is an increased annual growth rate of 14%. Finally, if we talk about fish production, it is 11.92 lakh metric tons. Please note that Odisha is the fourth largest producer of fish, okay, and the third largest exporter of marine products. Okay. So Odisha is the fourth largest, but which is the largest producer? Andhra Pradesh. Andhra is the largest producer of fish, okay, in India. Andhra is followed by West Bengal, then Karnataka, and finally Odisha. It's important to note that shrimp exports reached over 4708 crores, okay, from Odisha. Next, the economic survey says that industry contributes 41.3% of the gross state value added. Now, when we say industry contributes 41.3% of the GSVA, it means out of total value created in the state's economy, 41.3% comes from the industrial sector. But the question is, what is GSVA? Okay. So the gross state value added, it basically measures the actual value which is created by all sectors in a state after subtracting the cost of intermediate goods. Okay, so it shows sector-wise contribution to the economy, but please note that the intermediate goods are subtracted from it. It is the actual value which is created by all the sectors in a state. Okay, but we are not taking into account the cost of intermediate goods. Intermediate goods means what? The raw materials, these are not taken into account. They're the inputs that are used in the production. Okay. To give you an example, if a steel plant produces steel worth 1000 crores, then we can say that iron ore was used, coal was used, electricity was used. So if 600 crores were calculated as intermediate cost, then that is not taken into account. 41.3% comes from industry. Now, what counts as industry? Manufacturing, steel, cement, textiles, food processing, coal, iron ore, bauxite, construction, electricity and power generation. All these comprise the industry. Okay. And since Odisha is a mineral rich state, of course, it has large steel plants, coal mining projects, aluminium smelters, thermal power plants, etc. The value that the industrial sector is producing, which is 41.3%, the value of it is how much? 3.6 lakh crores. So roughly we can say that the rest of the sectors, they produce around 5.1 lakh crores, because if 41% is the 41.3% is the total, then 8.7 lakh crores would be the total GSV, and out of that 3.6 lakh crores from the industrial sector and the rest 5.1 lakh crores from the rest of the sectors like agriculture, service sector, etc. I'm explaining in a very detailed manner. Why? Because we need to have our concepts clear here, right? If we talk about the growth in manufacturing sector, it is around 8.3%. Okay, the national average is quite lower. If we talk about the recent data, it was 8.1% year-on-year growth, the national average in December 2025. So yes, 8.3% again higher than the national average. There's a huge momentum in the investments in various projects. For example, 244 projects have been already approved, and there's a proposed investment of 5.66 lakh crores, okay, and which can generate an employment of 3.35 lakhs, okay, and 80 projects have already been implemented. till date. Very important, and 1.4 lakh jobs have been created. Okay. Implementation rate under Business Reforms Action Plan 2024 is 98.98%, which is a big achievement. And the Odisha Jan Vishwas legislation simplified compliance and reduced criminal penalties for minor business violations, and that is why the reduction in the penalties and also the simplification of the compliance process, etc., it boosted the business sector, the industrial sector. Okay, and this also improved the ease of doing business. Next is the service sector. Okay, the fastest growing segment, because service sector accounts for 39.1% of the GSVA. These figures are extremely important from OPSC prelims point of view. The projected growth is 9.3%. Okay, and financial services are expected to grow at 11.9%. Here, this particular figure, 39.1%, this one is extremely important. Okay. Now, there are new policies which includes the Artificial Intelligence Policy 2025, Global Capability Center Policy 2025, Semiconductor and Fabless Policy 2025, and all these, they signal a transition toward a technology-driven economy. Extremely important. Tech-driven economy. Okay. Fiscal discipline is also really good, because the capital expenditure is budgeted at 6.6% of the gross state domestic product. Okay, and this is the highest among major states. We all know that a high capital expenditure is always great for the economy, because capital expenditure is the spending that leads to the creation of assets. Okay, it reduces the liabilities and it has a long-term impact on the economy, because we know it includes building infrastructure such as roads, railways, ports, irrigation projects, and then purchasing machinery or defense equipment. So basically it enhances the productive capacity and promotes economic growth. So for a good fiscal discipline, of course we need to have a good capital expenditure, and it should be more than the revenue expenditure, because revenue expenditure is spending for the day-to-day functioning of the government. Okay, it is not creating any assets. So it includes the salaries, the pensions, the subsidies, the interest payments. Basically it helps in maintaining the existing services, but it does not directly add to the productive capacity. So capital expenditure builds assets for the future, while revenue expenditure sustains the present system. And that is why when we say that capital expenditure is 6.6% of the gross state domestic product and it is highest among major states, it's a very good news for Odisha. Now, debt to gross state domestic product ratio, GSTP, it stands at 13.6%. Okay. Now, debt to GSTP ratio is a key indicator of a state's fiscal health and sustainability. It basically shows the proportion of a state's total outstanding liabilities compared to its gross state domestic product. Okay. So basically, total outstanding liabilities divided by GSDP. Okay, so basically it indicates the factors, like it basically measures the debt burden of a state. Okay, it also reflects a state's capacity to repay that debt, and it indicates fiscal discipline and macroeconomic stability. So if the ratio is low, a lower ratio suggests better fiscal sustainability. On the other hand, a higher ratio may signal fiscal stress and rising interest burden. Okay, so we all know about the FRBM Act. So, under the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Framework, states are generally expected to maintain their debt to GSDP ratio at around 25 to 30%. And Odisha's is 13.6%, which is well below the ceiling. Okay. Finally, if we talk about the interest payments, that is the percentage of revenue receipts, it is 2.8%. Okay, interest payments to revenue receipts. So it basically measures how much of a government's regular income is used only to pay interest on a debt that was taken like long back on a past debt. Okay, and we all know about revenue receipts. Of course, it includes the tax revenue, the non-tax revenue, and the grants from the central government. Now, this particular ratio is extremely important because it shows the interest burden on the government. It also reflects how much revenue is locked in servicing debt, and it indicates again fiscal sustainability. Since Odisha's interest payments, that is the percentage of revenue receipts, is only 2.8%, this indicates what? High infrastructure spending, okay, in terms of capital expenditure, low debt burden, and sustainable fiscal position. So Odisha is maintaining growth without any fiscal stress. Now, if we talk about the infrastructure expansion, ports like Paradeep, Dhamra and Gopalpur are operational. Paradeep handles around 18% of India's cargo. Very important from OPSC prelims point of view. Now, there are non-major port capacity and it is about to rise to 500 million metric tons per annum. If you talk about the rail network, it is around 3 kilometers. Okay, a network which is huge. Passenger growth is around 40% since 2021 to 2022. Okay, there are 5 operational airports and connectivity is there with 30 cities, and the passenger growth is 31% annually. So infrastructure is supporting the industrial growth and exports to a huge extent. Next, if we talk about the social sector, okay, very important from OPSC prelims point of view that the health expenditure, it has increased to a huge extent. In 2019-20 it was 6,200 crores and now it is 19,700 crores. So a huge like expansion. Okay, then if we talk about the education budget, this has also increased, okay, from 22,527 crores to 31,185 crores, which is an increase by 38.4%. Alright, and if we talk about the health sector, right now 8,500 public health institutions are operational right now, and we have already discussed the education budget as well, very important from OPSC prelims point of view, and 84% schools have internet access, very important to note. And Odisha schools, like government schools, account for over 80% enrollment. So government schools in Odisha, they have an enrollment of 80%, which is a big news. Okay, now Odisha World Skills Center is there. Here the placement rate is 93%. Okay, and this indicates strong focus on skill development. Finally, if we talk about social inclusion and women empowerment, okay, so 16.42 lakh Lakpati Didis were created, very important. Now there are creches, hostels, night shift reforms, okay, and 34.3% higher education enrollment from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities. Very important to note this particular figure. So these facts and figures are all important. 31.7% industrial employment from these communities, SCs and STs. So all these reflect what? They reflect inclusive growth. Finally, if we talk about the sports sector, okay, 1319 crore allocated for sports and youth services. There are like around 6 regional sports hubs that have been already developed. 600 crores infrastructure investment is ongoing, and Odisha continues to brand itself as sports capital of India. So this was all about the economic survey. Okay, all the facts and figures and the various concepts are extremely important from OPSC prelims as well as mains point of view. You can use these facts, quote these numbers in your mains answers as well, and very important from prelims as well. So prepare well, study well, and all the best.